This is a big story this week. So Andrew Huberman, I'd actually never heard of him. I'm not a huge kind of lifestyle podcast listener.
Really?
No, not really. And
you think it's all woo-woo.
A lot of woo-woo.
Yeah, vitamin D, woo-woo.
He's really popular. He's pretty new. He only started a few years ago.
I like Andrew. I like reflexively defended him. I don't even know what he's accused of.
So
people are like, Charlie, he's kind of like...
It's a pretty crazy thing.
He's kind of a Casanova
He is
here.
So he is a cognitive scientist, does these podcast things.
He's a legit...
he's legit. He is a legit scientist,
Yes.
has the PhD. They tried to take him down as like a phony scientist. That's not legit.
Okay.
He is a
Because if you were going to go there, he's like an actual professor of neurobiology and ophthalmology at Stanford.
100%. And he has an insanely popular podcast, one of the most popular in the world.
It's one of the top 5 most downloaded podcasts on the planet.
Yeah, millions and millions of subscribers. So if you haven't heard of him, other people have. But this Hitpiece drops kind of, I don't want to say out of nowhere because there were some signs building up to this, but New York Magazine, which 2 months ago, their cover story was promoting polyamory. So suddenly they come out and they have their headline, Andrew Huberman's Mechanisms of Control, the private and public seductions of the world's biggest pop neuroscientist. And it turns out that Andrew Huberman, apparently at every waking moment that he was not making a podcast episode, was juggling one of 6 different women. And the actual like mechanics of it are pretty impressive. Like, let me see if I can get the text here. Like he would literally be meeting one person. Yeah. The women compared time-stamped screenshots of text and assembled an extraordinary record of deceptions. There was a day in Texas when, after Sarah left his hotel, Andrew slept with Mary and texted Eve. They found days in which he would text nearly identical pictures of himself to 2 of them at the same time. They realized that the day before he had moved in with Sarah in Berkeley, he had slept with Mary, and he had also been with her in December 2023, the weekend before Sarah caught him on a couch with a 6th woman. They realized that on March 21st, 2021, a day of admittedly impressive logistical jujitsu, while Sarah was in Berkeley, Andrew had flown Mary in from Texas to LA to stay with him in Topanga. While Mary was there, visiting from thousands of miles away, he left her and drove to meet Eve at a coffee shop where they had a serious talk about their relationship. They thought they were in a good place. He wanted to make it work.
But that's an extraordinary amount of reporting. But why is he being targeted? And he's being targeted because he's popular and because he goes straight after the pharmaceutical companies. He talks a lot about
big pharma.
Yes, he talks about natural solutions of how you don't need all these pharmacological agents, all these antidepressants, all these anti-anxiety medications, all this Ozempic, how you can improve your life. This is a hit job straight from Pfizer, AstraZeneca, 100%. Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. Their dark arts, black propaganda, PR operation said, we have to try to take out Andrew Huberman. This guy is getting into the hearts and minds of too many people, specifically young men. Jack, do you agree?
I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, you have to look at any of these people who come out there and whether we had Roig Nationalist on the show the other day, and that's exactly what we were talking about, that this is something that he gets into a lot as well in his work and his writings. And I don't know Huberman, but we happen to, Egg and myself have talked about this for a while, that it's clear that this has become something that, I don't know if you want to say it's a right-wing thing or just sort of an anti-mainstream opinion now, anti-mainstream position to be embracing holistic lifestyles, getting out of pharmaceuticals, getting into biohacking, these types of things. Charlie, I think you know something about ice baths, as a matter of fact.
I'm somewhat of a biohacker.
And it's amazing. Right, and it's amazing, and by the way, incredible, because it's absolutely vitalist that the right is starting to embrace these things, and should, by the way, in many ways, because this was predominantly sort of the place of like the woo-woo hippies years ago. And, they all turned into like greenies and climate changers. And so all of this information has been out there. And it turns out that by and large, there's been a lot of truth to it. And this is where Huberman gets in. Huberman, in a way, I would say, presents himself as conservative. I don't know that he's particularly political in any way. I think he's just a guy who follows the data.
He follows the data, and he's all about improving people's lives. And his audience is very similar to the Joe Rogan audience. So let's listen to this one here. Huberman says, quote, "The health benefits of alcohol diminish after 2 weeks a drink. A risk of breast cancer for women rises." So if I was one of the top liquor companies, I would try to take Huberman out. He's telling millions of people that alcohol is poison. which it is poison. Play cut 105.
And I don't tell people what to do. I give them the facts so they can make the best decisions for them. I mean, it's very clear that unless you're an alcoholic, and provided you're an adult, that 2 drinks per week maximum is about the upper threshold beyond which you're going to start getting some health
That's called a warm up to a warm up in England.
Yeah. So I've never been a big drinker. I don't drink. I'm lucky that it's not something that's a strong draw for me.
Me too.
I have friends that are recovered alcoholics. And their lives are so much better as a function of being sober. But for non-alcoholics, I mean, I think everyone should just know the health risks, especially women, where the risks for breast cancer and other types of cancer.
And that's just the taste. He talks a lot about how if you don't eat well, if you don't exercise, you don't sleep well. His podcasts are very data-driven, and they're long. They're 2.5 to 3 hours, and they're almost just like a lecture. Here's what this study says about this. Here's how you could increase your testosterone. Here's what might be limiting your testosterone. Let's go to this one here. How your brain changes by doing hard things. Play cut 106.
Most people don't know this, but there's a brain structure called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. But what's interesting about this brain area is there are now a lot of data in humans, not some mouse study, showing that when people do anything that and this is the important part, that they don't want to do. Right. It's not about adding more work, it's about adding more work that you don't want to do. Yes. This brain area gets bigger. Yeah. Now here's what's especially interesting about this brain area to me. The anterior mid-cingulate cortex is smaller in obese people. It gets bigger when they diet. It's larger in athletes. It's especially large or grows larger in people that see themselves as challenged and overcome some challenge. And in people that live a very long time, this area keeps its size. Scientists are starting to think of the anterior mid-cingulate cortex not just as one of the seats of willpower, perhaps actually the seat of the will to live.
So the final one you want to play here, it's amazing. And by the way, that's his whole shtick, which is like, here's what the neuroscience says about watching porn. His stuff on porn has been viewed over 100 million times. If I was the porn industry, I would want to take him out. If I was the indulgence industry, I would want to take him out. If I was like the pleasure-based industry.
And if any industry had a bunch of people that they could throw to seduce a person and get him into
so you're saying that you're saying that this is a honeypot operation.
Not really, because actually all the women are like 42 years old. So sorry, bad news.
So he's big into that. Final one is
Charlie,
this.
Though,
yes.
If I can double tap that to kind of bring us back to the first subject, isn't it interesting that so many of the behaviors that are proscribed as sinful in the Bible are also now coming up to be on the other side of where the neuroscientific data leads us? Isn't
it? The Bible is true. That monogamy is good for you, and having children and doing hard things. Right. A man shall not work, he shall not eat, and that alcohol is poison and
for you.
And that a man who drinks forgets the law. It's like Andrew Huberman, through science, is proving the truth of the Bible. Last one is this. Play cut 110.
You can't have long-term affairs with 6 different partners.
Yeah, unless he's juggling multiple phone accounts or something.
Right. And some men try to do that, but I think could be very taxing.
And with that, we will end it. Final thoughts, anybody?
I just wish he'd, followed the science on it's probably bad to juggle 7 women in your life. That's got to be stressful.
It's got to be stressful.
Hey, if you're single, I would say, guys, to all the young kings out there, work the rotation until you find the one that makes you want to stop the rotation.
Andrew Huberman, if Andrew Huberman does a podcast soon about STDs, then we'll know.